Now, a very different take on sins of the father, growing up as a mob daughter. The woman you're about to meet survived growing up around hitmen, and she's currently surviving the hair-pulling and catfights on mob wives. Karen Gravano. You won't necessarily recognize her name, but you'll definitely know her father's. Before you judge, just listen. Here's Jay Shadler.
I mean, as far as being a hitman, I actually was good at it.
Oh, yes, he was. Sammy the Bull Gravano either pulled the trigger or arranged the murder of at least 19 people.
I remember something that surprised me that I had no remorse at all. None.
And then Sammy would come home.
What kind of dad was he? What kind of father?
He was a great father.
Sammy's daughter, Karen Gravano.
He was home every night for dinner. If we were sick, he was by our bed. He really cared about our schoolwork. He was someone that if you need, he'll be there for you.
In the strangely warped world of gangster families, the Gravanos have no peer. Dad was the hitman, and now she's got a hit TV show chronicling the lives of women whose husbands and fathers are connected to the mob.
The big, big bang, the reason I'm alive.
This is to Karen Gravano.
You have a problem because of who my father is? Because you can't be in the same place? Because you're just a weak-minded individual?
Of course, no cable catfight can compare to living in the genuine lion's den of the mafia.
I'll keep coming for you, you dirty hoe!
As raunchy as this reality TV show can get, it can't compete with the true reality of a young girl growing up Gravano.
When you're a kid, what is it that you thought your dad did for a living?
Construction. Everyone thinks their father, who is in the mob, is in the construction business. And my father really was in the construction business.
Well, in a fashion. At one point, Karen's dad could rightly claim that much of New York's glittering skyline was a creation of his mob-controlled unions. An operation Sammy ran from this tiny office in Bensonhurst, New York, complete with two-way glass.
Did you ever ask your father, why do you need a two-way mirror in your office?
And a kitchen full of mob stories.
Your father himself says that someone was killed in this room right here.
I think I did hear that.
Karen heard a lot of things as Sammy's daughter. For instance, at a time when a young girl's biggest concern might be, say, getting braces, Karen was getting familiar with the word gangster.
When you said you knew that he was a gangster of some sort, was that a negative or a positive connotation?
It was a positive, and I'll tell you why. One of my classmates invited me over to her house. She said, "You see that house over there? My parents told me a big gangster lives over there."
That would have been the home of Paul Castellano, the reigning mafia kingpin.
So to me, I felt like, well, if Paul's a gangster, then if my father's a gangster too, that's a good thing. Maybe we can have a house and live on the hill someday.
In the universe of gangsters, Karen had been born into royalty.
She's a princess wherever she's walking.
Former FBI agent George Gabriel knew the mob scene here as well as anyone.
She was treated differently in school. People don't say no to the Gravano family at that time.
With good reason. In 1997, while Sammy was living under the Federal Witness Protection Program, he granted Diane Sawyer an exclusive interview. Now, Diane's just about heard it all, but even she seems staggered by Sammy's ruthlessness.
Look over the list of the murders you were involved in. There, how many?
19.
Serial killers don't have 19.
One of the early murders on that long, bloody list took place in 1982. Karen was 10 years old.
The first time I may have suspected that he was a killer probably was the time that Frank Fiala was murdered outside of his nightclub.
Karen had been hearing her father complain about Fiala, and then one night, creeping upstairs to ask Dad's permission for a sleepover, she found...
And the door was closed a little bit, and when I opened it, and I seen him tuck a gun into the back of his pants, and he looked over at me and he says, "Don't you knock?"
The only slumber party that night was for Frank Fiala, whose bullet-riddled body was found by the side of the road.
Did you put two and two together?
I definitely thought that possibly he can be involved. I think as a kid, you don't want to think about that, so you think about it for a minute, and then you just stop.
Did you ever go to your other friends and say, you know, I think my dad might be killing people?
No.
Because that would be quite a revelation.
You know, what do you do as a kid? Do you go and call the police and say, "I think my father left the house, he might have murdered someone last night"? I don't know how to react to it.
There's no way Karen didn't understand what Daddy was doing. She's being treated differently because of who she is.
And let there be no mistake, she's Sammy's daughter. You're peeking in on one of those sweet but surreal moments. Karen in the arms of her father at her sweet 16 birthday party.
I love my father. He's my protector. He was a provider. He was a friend.
But before you get all misty, you might want to know that the real guest of honor at Karen's party was none other than the Teflon Don, John Gotti.
I walked over and my father said, "Say hello to Uncle John." And I said hello to Uncle John, and he gave me an envelope, and in the envelope was, $10, $100 bills.
What did you make of John Gotti?
He was intriguing. He had this certain aura about him. When I went back to school, people were like, I heard John Gotti was at your party, you little mafia princess.
Though she's offended by that label, she was most certainly growing fond of the luxuries. Like her own flower shop, bought by Sammy for Karen's high school graduation.
It was a booming business overnight.
How come? I mean, you had just opened this shop and suddenly you got a lot of business
it was
already.
just gangsters love to send flowers, I guess.
A lot of funerals.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody could turn a bouquet into a bloodbath faster than Sammy the Bull.
Police say that Paul Castellano, the reputed head of the Gambino crime family, and another man were shot and killed.
On December 16, 1985, Sammy helped mastermind the murder of Paul Castellano.
I knew my father was involved in Paul Castellano's murder.
And yet, wasn't there a feeling of some power as a result of that, too? That wasn't all negative news there, was it?
No, it wasn't negative news at the time. Turning on the news, and there was my father and John Gotti walking up the streets. People were, glorifying it. So I felt like I was part of something that was big.
But big is about to become epic as Sammy Gravano turns the tables on the mob and on Karen's life.
It was like he stuck a knife through my heart. My father is, he's betraying me. How could he do this?
On an autumn day in 1991, in a New York prison, Sammy the Bull Gravano, underboss for the Gambino crime family, dropped a bombshell on his wife, son, and daughter.
He looked me dead in the eyes and he said, "I'm going to do something that goes against everything I believe in and everything I've ever told you to believe in. I'm going to cooperate with the government."
In a mafia minute, the Persian rugs had been pulled out from 19-year-old Karen Gravano's world.
I was hurt because I felt like everything he taught me in my life, you never tell. I felt like the life that I grew up in was ripped out from underneath me.
Karen's father had taken the mafia commandment, "Thou shalt not betray the boss," and shattered it atop John Gotti's head. But this nearly did not happen because of Karen. FBI agent George Gabriel helped arrange Sammy's cooperation.
Her concern, outrage that her father had turned, almost caused him to break up the deal. She just couldn't deal with the betrayal.
And of course, it only made matters worse that the whole affair was played out on the front pages.
Being a rat was, in your mind at that point, just as bad as all those killings.
It was probably worse at that point.
Isn't that amazing?
My friends were told that they were supposed to cut off all contact with me. I wasn't allowed in their house. Everybody's mad at him for cooperating. See, even those people that were involved in that lifestyle that may have lost a family member weren't mad that he killed someone. They were more mad that he cooperated.
Isn't that
ironic?
Well, to say the least, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can see how twisted this all became.
Yes. It was very twisted.
Just how twisted was revealed when the full list of Sammy's victims was released. Among them was none other than Karen's own uncle, her mother's brother.
I always wondered how you dealt with the fact that you knew your father had been involved with the murder of your mother's brother.
I don't think about it. I try not to think about that. Something that my family, we don't really discuss.
Louis Melito, good friend of your father's. He killed him.
Right.
Didn't you ever ask him, how could you do this?
I did ask him that. And he said, just like every other man in that lifestyle did, you take an oath that you will kill if you need to, for your family.
Shortly after his primetime interview, Sammy left the witness protection program and moved to Phoenix, setting up a legitimate construction business. Karen, along with her mother and brother Gerard, moved here too. In her new book, to be published this week, about her life as a mob daughter, Karen writes these days in Phoenix were a struggle to find a new identity.
And you say, I had a choice to make a new life, but I felt more comfortable being bad. You did?
I did.
Why?
Because I felt being bad is where you gain respect. I've seen it my whole life growing up.
In short order, she hooked up with an ex-con, and she and her brother began selling drugs. In the meantime, word had begun to spread that the charming guy with the construction business was actually Sammy the Bull.
He went from having legitimate construction business once everybody figured out who he was. All those contracts dried up.
Perhaps it was inevitable, but Sammy soon reverts to his old ways, financing a small drug ring. But this time, the family is literally his own.
Arrested for drug dealing?
Yes. 4 of us in my immediate family. My father, my mother, my brother, and myself.
Sammy was eventually sentenced to 19 years in prison. His son Gerard, 9 years, while Karen and her mother were placed on probation and released.
That was the birthday party.
Oh my gosh.
Today, Karen's a single mom, splitting her time between New York and Phoenix, where she lives with her 11-year-old daughter, Karina. She's also launching her own line of skincare products. Sammy will remain an inmate until 2019.
Your dad's face has certainly grown softer. Has his heart?
Absolutely. I can say that. In prison, he wants to pass time, so he got involved in doing art, which is really cool because I never thought he had this talent. This is something that's special. He sent this to his grandkids. This is one of his first paintings. It's to my grandchildren, Nicholas and Karina, from Papa Bull, Salvatore Gravano.
But even a mobster who can draw fairies draws the line when it comes to his daughter's new TV show.
Big gangsta bitch, call it, figure it out, make me leave, because I'm not...
What does your dad think of the show?
He doesn't like the show. He has a very hard time with that. I have a problem with the fact that my father was a gangster and possibly put a gun in someone's head and shot him in the back.
When an episode airs, does your dad call you?
Season 1, it would air on Sunday, and I get a call on Monday.
And the first words were?
Watch your mouth. Why are you cursing on TV? You know, I'm here for you. I'm your father, but I can't watch it.
TV critic, artist, hitman. What's a daughter to think?
Do you think your dad is still capable of killing?
Yes. Do I think that he wants to do that? No. I think that if he was sitting in this room right here, right now with us, and somebody went to go hurt me, he's going to kill you in 2 seconds flat.
You can read an excerpt from Karen Gravano's new book, Mob Daughter, at our website, abcnews.com/2020.